The Lost Earth warship had been gone for more than 30 years. People believed it was destroyed in a distant battle. Families had mourned, Earth Command had closed the files, and the galaxy had moved on. Then one quiet night, the long-range scanners on the edge of Earth space screamed alive. A broken signal was caught, an identification code that should have been impossible. It was the Horizon. The Horizon had been one of the proud flagships of Earth's fleet, armed with heavy weapons, built for deep war, feared by enemies and loved by her crew. But she had vanished during a desperate fight near the Orion Rift. All ships that went looking for her never returned. Some whispered that the rift had swallowed her whole. Others said enemy forces had captured her, but no answer was ever found. Now she was back, drifting at the edge of the Sol system, scarred and silent. The defense perimeter woke up with flashing alarms. Young officers stared at their screens, their mouths dry. Old veterans shook their heads in disbelief. Reports rushed to Earth Command. Some thought it must be a trick. Some thought it was a ghost signal, but the scanners did not lie. The hull was real. The ship was there, her engines cold, her lights weak, yet she carried the Earth emblem across her side like a scar of old wars. The first transmissions were automated, repeating the ship's name and call sign. The voice of a long-dead system officer echoed over the comm channels, but no human voice answered. No captain, no crew, nothing but static. The silence was more terrifying than any threat, because silence meant something had happened aboard, something that no one could yet see. Admiral Royce, a man who had fought in 2 wars, stood in the command chamber staring at the holographic projection. The Horizon rotated slowly in the light. Her metal body cracked, parts missing. Weapon turrets bent like broken bones, yet she was still whole. "Bring her in," Royce ordered, his voice calm but heavy. "We will not ignore her return." Some officers whispered that it was too dangerous, that the ship should be destroyed before it reached Earth orbit. But the Admiral shook his head. "That is an Earth ship, and we do not destroy our own until we know the truth." A tug squadron moved out, their engines glowing, their crews nervous. As they latched onto the Horizon's hull, the old warship did not resist. She floated like a corpse in space, drifting where she was pulled. Scanners kept flashing warnings. Faint energy spikes moved inside the ship, but no life signs were found, not human, not alien, nothing the machines could read. Yet shapes were detected on motion sensors, shadows moving in empty corridors. News spread across Earth within hours. People gathered in streets, in homes, on ships. They watched the broadcast of the lost warship returning. Old families wept as they saw the Horizon again. Some prayed that their sons and daughters might still live inside, frozen in sleep, waiting to be saved. Others feared that the ship carried death back with her. The Horizon was brought into orbit, her once shining armor now black with burn marks, windows shattered, long scars across her decks. Docking clamps locked her in place near the military ring station. Soldiers lined up in hangars, armored and ready, their weapons charged. They were chosen to be the first to enter. Whispers spread among them, stories of ghost ships and cursed crews. None of them wanted to admit their fear, but it was in their eyes. As the Marines prepared to board, engineers scanned the docking bay doors of the Horizon. The metal was twisted but still functional. Faint energy hummed behind it like the heartbeat of something that refused to die. "No sign of pressure leaks," one engineer said, his voice shaking. "We can open it." The commander nodded. The soldiers checked their rifles. Helmets sealed, hearts pounding, before the hatch could open. The Horizon sent out one last signal. Sudden and sharp, a cry of digital noise. Speakers across the control station screamed with static. Then a single voice emerged, broken, weak, but human. "This is Horizon. Do not board. It's still here." Then silence again. Every officer froze, every soldier glanced at his partner. "What is still here?" Admiral Royce demanded, but no one answered. The voice was gone. The channel was dead. Scanners flashed red again, picking up movement deep inside the ship, shapes sliding through corridors where no crew remained. The order came down. The Marines were to enter despite the warning. They would find the truth. They would uncover what the Horizon carried. The docking clamps clanged. The old ship groaned like a dying beast, and the hatch began to open with a screech. Darkness spilled out like smoke, thick and heavy on the viewing screens. Millions of people watched, breath held, waiting to see what would step out of the void, what would crawl from the silence of 30 years. And as the hatch opened wide, the Marines raised their rifles. their lights cutting into the shadows only to see faint trails of something moving away, faster than human, vanishing into deeper darkness. The horizon was back, but she was not alone. The docking clamps locked tight. The hiss of pressure equalizing echoed through the comm channels, and the first Marine squad stepped across the threshold into the horizon. Their armored boots clanged against the metal floor, the sound too loud in the eerie silence. Their helmet lights cut through the dark corridors, revealing walls covered in deep claw marks, scorch burns, and twisted wires that hung like vines. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of burnt plastic and something else, something metallic and rotten. The commander raised his hand. The squad spread into formation, rifles up, eyes sharp, yet the silence pressed on them like a weight. There was no hum of engines, no steady breathing of the ship's systems, only the faint crackle of static from their radios. Every step they took echoed back to them, as if the ship itself was listening. Signs of life appeared, but not the kind they hoped for. A broken helmet lay against the wall, smeared with dried blood, a rifle bent in half as if crushed by inhuman strength. The Marines looked at one another but said nothing. Fear had no place in their orders still. Their grips on their weapons tightened. They moved deeper, passing crew quarters left in chaos, bunks torn open, walls scratched with strange symbols. Some symbols looked human, words of desperation carved in shaking hands. "Don't sleep," they whisper in the dark. The captain lied. Others were alien shapes, spirals and jagged marks glowing faintly, pulsing as if alive. One Marine touched the wall and quickly pulled back. His glove sizzled as if burned. The squad reached the central corridor. Here the damage grew worse. Entire panels ripped away, ceilings caved in. Scorch marks ran like veins across the walls. The commander paused at a door that barely clung to its frame. "Breach it," he ordered. 2 Marines set charges. The blast tore it open with a boom that echoed down the halls. Smoke cleared, and inside they found the med bay. The med bay was worse than a battlefield. Beds overturned. Equipment smashed. Glass shattered across the floor, but what froze them were the cryopods lined against the wall. 6 of them cracked open, the glass covered in handprints. The inside smeared with blood, one cryopod remained sealed, its frost-covered glass glowing faintly. The squad approached, rifles ready. The frost began to clear as if sensing their presence, and there he was, a man in uniform, pale and still, his chest rising slowly in frozen sleep. His nameplate read Captain Elias Ward. The commander stiffened. "Impossible," he whispered. "Ward has been dead for decades." The Marines checked their data. It matched. The very same captain who had commanded the horizon when she vanished. Before they could decide, the cryopod hissed, steam poured out. The locks disengaged and the lid creaked open. Captain Ward gasped awake, coughing, eyes wide with terror, his skin pale, his hands shaking. He looked at the Marines as if they were ghosts. "Close it," he shouted with a voice cracking from disuse. "Close it before it follows, before it knows you're here." The commander knelt beside him. "Captain Ward, you are safe now. You're on the horizon." "You've been found," but Ward shook his head violently, his eyes darting to the shadows. "No, not safe, never safe. It's here. It's always here. It wears us, it learns us. It never lets go." His voice broke into sobs. The Marines tried to calm him. One offered water. Another scanned him with a med tool. His vitals were strange, his heart beating too slow, his cells showing age and youth at the same time. The med tool gave confused readings. "Sir," one Marine said, "he shouldn't even be alive." Ward grabbed the commander's arm with surprising strength, his eyes glowing faintly. "You don't understand. We didn't come back, not really, only pieces, only fragments." Suddenly, the lights across the corridor flickered. The ship groaned as if waking from a nightmare. Faint shapes darted at the edge of the Marine's vision, tall and thin with too many limbs. Shadows that melted into walls. Rifles swung, but nothing was there when the light steadied. The air turned colder. Breath misted inside helmets, and the static on their radios formed whispers. Voices layered over one another, human voices screaming, begging, laughing. Ward struggled to his feet, his uniform hanging loose, his face pale. "You must burn it," he begged. "Burn the ship, burn me if you must. But don't take it to Earth." The Marines looked at their commander, waiting, but orders were orders. Their mission was to recover survivors, not destroy them. They moved to escort Ward. But as they stepped back into the corridor, alarms blared through the horizon, old speakers crackling with life. A woman's voice, broken and distorted, began repeating the ship's log entry. "Day 121. Unknown entity aboard. Crew compromised, containment failed. Then a scream cut off the recording, replaced by laughter. Laughter that grew and grew until it filled every hall. The Marines tightened formation. Ward stumbled but pushed forward, whispering under his breath, "It's awake now. It knows you're here." A shadow darted across the ceiling. A Marine fired, the blast lit the corridor, revealing nothing, but when the lights dimmed again, the wall behind them was covered in new scratches. Fresh and wet, a single word carved deep, "Welcome." The commander's voice cracked as he gave the order. "Fall back, we're taking him to command," but deep inside, every soldier knew the truth. They had not boarded a ship. They had boarded something else. Something that carried hunger inside its hull. As the hatch sealed behind them, as they dragged Ward toward the waiting tug, the horizon trembled, its systems flickered, and deep within its shadowed halls something moved. Something that had been waiting for 30 years, and now it had new prey. The medical bay on the station was bright. Too bright for Captain Elias Ward. He shielded his eyes as doctors surrounded him. Machines scanned his body. Lights blinked. Questions poured from every corner. But he answered none of them clearly. He only stared at the window where the horizon floated in orbit. The warship he once commanded. The warship that should not have returned. The doctors whispered to each other. Their screens gave impossible results. Ward's DNA was a perfect match with Earth's records, yet his cells showed strange patterns, aging and reversing at the same time. Like time itself could not decide if he was alive or dead. His heart beat too slow. His blood carried traces of something unknown. Every test was a contradiction. Admiral Royce entered, his steps heavy. His presence commanding the room, he looked at Ward with disbelief and a flicker of fear. "You are Captain Elias Ward," he said. "You disappeared 30 years ago. Your records state you died with your crew." Ward's lips trembled, his voice weak. "We did die, Admiral, all of us died, and yet here I stand. Don't ask me how, because I do not know. I only know that something came back with us." The Admiral frowned. "What do you mean, something?" Ward leaned closer, his eyes darting around the room as if the walls themselves were listening. "It followed us through the rift. It hid in our shadows. It wore our faces. It learned our names. We tried to fight. We tried to burn it. But it cannot be killed. It waits. It watches. And it wants more." The doctors exchanged nervous glances. The Admiral's jaw tightened. He ordered the room cleared. Only he and 2 guards remained with Ward. "Captain," he said softly, "Earth deserves the truth. What happened to the horizon?" Ward closed his eyes, memories flooding back. He remembered the rift, a storm of light and gravity tearing the ship apart. He remembered his crew screaming as shapes of black glass and liquid shadow crawled through the corridors. He remembered shooting his own officers when their faces twisted into something not human, and he remembered the whispers, endless whispers that never left, voices that spoke in his mind even now. "It was not space we entered," he whispered. "It was something else, something between, and we were food to it." One guard shifted nervously, his knuckles white on his rifle. But the Admiral pressed on. "How did you survive?" Ward laughed, a hollow sound. "Survive? I didn't. None of us did. Pieces of us did. Fragments stitched together by the dark. I am not Captain Ward, not truly. I am only what remains of him. Wearing his face." The Admiral froze. The guards raised their weapons instinctively. Ward lifted his hands, not in defense, but in surrender. "Shoot me if you must, perhaps it is better. But remember this, Admiral, if you destroy me, you destroy the only one who remembers how to fight it." Before the Admiral could reply, the lights flickered. The medical bay screens went black. Alarms shrieked across the station. The guards turned their rifles toward the door. Static poured from the speakers, and then came the voices, hundreds of voices, human voices calling for help, screaming in agony, laughing in madness. Every voice of the horizon's lost crew, echoing across the comms. Ward fell to his knees, clutching his head. "It's here," he groaned. "It followed. It found the way." Admiral Royce barked orders into his comm. Demanding reports, the response came back broken. Entire sectors of the station were losing power. Motion sensors picked up activity in empty corridors. Soldiers vanished without sound. Only their weapons left behind. The Admiral pulled Ward to his feet. "What is it after?" he demanded. Ward's eyes glowed faintly, a shimmer of unnatural light. "It wants memory, it wants identity, it feeds on what we are. It learns by becoming us. The more it eats, the more it wears us like clothes," his voice cracked. "And it never stops." In orbit, the horizon shuddered, her lights flickering in patterns like a heartbeat. Strange energy signatures pulsed from her hull. Alien and human systems fused together. Scanners showed impossible readings, parts of the ship phasing in and out of reality. Scientists watching from control rooms whispered in awe and terror. "It's alive," one said. "The ship is alive." Meanwhile, Ward was moved to a secure chamber. Sealed with guards at every door, he sat chained to a chair, breathing heavily, his voice a whisper. "You think chains will hold me, but you are wrong. You cannot chain what is already inside." His eyes burned brighter now, reflections of something not human, something ancient. The Admiral watched from behind glass. His mind torn, was this truly Captain Ward? Or was he the parasite itself wearing a mask? But then Ward began to hum a soft tune, the Earth anthem from decades past. His voice cracked but steady. The Admiral remembered hearing that same song in battle. Long ago, when Ward had led them to victory. His heart wavered, then Ward stopped suddenly. His head snapped up and he smiled. Not with warmth, but with something hollow. "Admiral," he said, his voice layered. Two voices speaking at once, one human, one not. "You are already infected." The Admiral staggered back, his chest tight, his vision blurring. A coldness spread through his veins. The guards raised their weapons, but the lights cut out again. The chamber plunged into darkness. Only Ward's glowing eyes remained visible. Twin sparks in the void, and in that silence, in that suffocating dark, the Admiral understood the truth. The horizon had not returned carrying survivors. It had returned carrying an invader, and Earth had already opened the door. The horizon drifted in Earth's orbit like a sleeping beast. Its hull scarred, its lights dim, but its presence was anything but dead. Sensors around the station lit up with warnings. Strange energy pulses flowed from the warship as if it were breathing. Scientists argued in hushed tones. Some called it a miracle of survival. Others whispered that it was a trap, waiting to open its jaws. On the military station, soldiers whispered too. Every patrol reported strange shadows in the corners of their vision, shapes moving on empty decks. Sometimes they heard footsteps behind them, but when they turned, no one was there. One squad swore they saw a figure in an old Earth Fleet uniform walking down the hall, its face hidden by shadow when they gave chase. The figure walked straight through a wall and vanished. Admiral Royce stood in the command chamber, his eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the horizon. Scientists fed him reports one after another, alien signatures in the engines. Systems fused with unknown technology, hull plates regenerating slowly as if alive. "This ship should not be studied," Royce muttered under his breath. But above him, Earth Command's High Council appeared as shimmering images, their voices stern. "The horizon is a treasure," one of them said. "Alien technology could give Earth a new age of power. Bring it in, Admiral. No destruction, no rash actions." Royce clenched his fists. Every instinct told him to burn the ship where it floated. But orders were orders. The horizon would be towed closer, attached to the station for deeper study. Behind him, his officers shifted uneasily. None of them wanted the ship near Earth. Yet none dared disobey inside his secured chamber. Captain Ward sat chained, his eyes hollow, his body trembling. He whispered to the guards, though they tried not to listen. "You think your leaders are safe? But it feeds already. It wears them, it speaks with their voices. You obey orders that are no longer human." One guard growled for him to shut up. But Ward only smiled faintly. "When it speaks to you, you will understand." That night cycle, power flickered across the station. One by one, surveillance feeds blinked out. The last image on the screen showed movement in the horizon's corridors. Black shapes crawling along ceilings, slipping through walls, tall bodies bending like shadows against the light. Then the cameras went dead. Alarms wailed. Soldiers scrambled through the station, but their rifles failed to lock onto targets. Scanners picked up nothing, yet screams echoed through the comm channels, cut short by static. Squads disappeared without leaving a trace. The horizon's docking clamps groaned as if the ship were straining to pull itself free. Royce barked orders, but the council interrupted through comms, demanding calm. "Containment only," they commanded. "No destruction." Their faces on the screen looked pale, their eyes hollow. Royce stared at them with growing dread. Were these still the counselors he had served all his life? Or were they something else? Something speaking through their mouths meanwhile. Scientists explored the ship's fusion core. They reported impossible readings. The core was no longer only a machine. It was fused with an alien organ, throbbing, glowing with veins of light when they tried to take samples. The walls sealed shut, trapping two of them inside. Their screams echoed through the comms before cutting into laughter. A chorus of laughter. The Marines on watch began to whisper about mutiny. Some wanted to cut the horizon loose, blast it into the void before it reached Earth. Others were afraid even to touch it. They spoke of curses, of voices in their helmets telling them their secrets. One soldier confessed he had heard his mother's voice calling his name from the ship's hull. Though his mother had been dead for years, Royce knew morale was collapsing. He marched towards chamber, his voice sharp. "Tell me the truth, Captain, what does it want?" Ward lifted his head, his eyes glowing faintly again. "It wants memory, Admiral. It wants history. It feeds on who we are, every laugh, every scream, every secret. It becomes us, and once it has enough, it will not need us anymore." He leaned forward with a mad grin. "And you brought it home." The Admiral slammed his fist against the glass, rage mixing with fear. "If I could, I would burn you and that cursed ship now." Ward only laughed softly, two voices spilling from his mouth at once. "You cannot, Admiral, you follow orders. But your leaders no longer belong to you, they belong to it." As if to prove his words, the council appeared again on Royce's display, their eyes now glowing faintly, their smiles too wide, their words perfectly calm. "Admiral, stand down, the horizon is no threat. We will harness its gift." Royce's blood ran cold. His men stared at the screen in silence. Some began to whisper prayers under their breath. Suddenly the station shook. The horizon's engines roared to life, though no one had activated them. The docking clamps screamed as the warship pulled against them. Her hull glowing with alien light, the ship was waking, and it was no longer theirs to command. Ward began to laugh harder in his cell, his chains rattling, his voice echoing across the intercom, though no comms were active. "It is here. It is awake. And it is hungry." Soldiers raised their rifles, alarms blared, and the horizon's shadow loomed across Earth's surface, not as a relic, not as a ghost, but as something alive, something waiting to open its jaws wide. And in that moment, Admiral Royce realized the truth. The battle for Earth had not yet begun. The horizon itself was the first weapon, and it was already inside their walls. The horizon hung in orbit like a scar across the stars, her broken hull glowing faintly with veins of alien light. Inside Earth's command stations, the arguments grew louder. Scientists demanded more time, more samples, more study, but soldiers demanded fire, destruction, an end to the threat before it reached the surface. Admiral Royce stood at the center of the storm, his voice cracking with fury. "This ship is no gift. It is a wound, and it is bleeding into us." But the High Council only smiled on their shimmering screens, their voices calm, their eyes glowing faintly. "Admiral, the horizon carries knowledge beyond our reach. You will not destroy it, you will protect it." Deep inside the ship, researchers in armored suits worked along shattered corridors. They placed scanners against the walls, and the readings twisted like nightmares. Human systems fused with something that was not metal, not flesh, but both. Doors breathed like lungs, cables pulsed like veins. The horizon was no longer just a ship. It was something alive, something that had been changed in the rift. The lead scientist, Dr. Kessler, placed her hand near the engine core and felt heat that was not heat, a rhythm that pulsed like a heart. She whispered into her calm, "This is not technology we understand, this is something grown, something stolen from another dimension." Suddenly the walls shifted, panels reshaped themselves like muscle flexing. Her scanners lit red, readings screamed across her visor. "It is aware of us," she gasped. And then her feed cut to static, back on the station. Ward sat in his chains, his head bowed, his voice hoarse from endless warnings no one wanted to hear. But when the lights flickered, he lifted his gaze, his glowing eyes piercing the gloom. "You see it now? Don't you?" He whispered to his guards. "It is not just inside the ship, it is inside you." One guard cursed and pressed the barrel of his rifle against Ward's head, but his finger froze on the trigger, his hands trembling as if something invisible held him back. Ward smiled. "Yes, you feel it, don't you? It is tasting your fear." Reports flooded the Admiral's desk. Station crew vanishing from sealed corridors. Voices heard whispering names that no one had spoken in years. Families of soldiers calling to them through comm channels, though those families were light years away. Royce slammed his fist down. "Enough," he shouted. "We will cut this ship loose, fire every cannon we have." But before the order could be sent, the Council overrode the command systems. "Stand down, Admiral. The horizon is Earth's future." Royce stared at their faces. Faces he had once respected, now pale and wrong, their smiles stretching too long. "You are not the Council anymore," he growled. but their voices answered in unison, layered with echoes. We are what Earth must become. Meanwhile, engineers discovered a sealed chamber deep in the horizon's belly. Behind twisted bulkheads and melted doors, they forced it open and found logs, recordings etched into half-human, half-machine consoles. They played one, and the voice of an old Horizon crew member screamed through the speakers. Day 87, it is inside our minds, it wears our memories. Jenkins shot himself when his own voice started whispering back. The captain says to fight, but we can't, it knows us. It is us. The recording cut into laughter before ending. Another log played, this one softer. Captain Ward's voice, younger, steadier. If anyone finds this, burn the horizon, burn me. Do not let us return, because if we do, something returns with us. And it should not exist. The researchers stared at one another in horror. The log ended, and the consoles began to hum with light, words carving themselves into the walls, fresh and wet. We are still here. Ward's warning spread among the lower ranks. Marines began whispering of rebellion. Some wanted to storm the station's command and force destruction. Others fell silent, their eyes glowing faintly, repeating the same phrase again and again. The horizon is ours. Royce gathered his most loyal officers in secret, his voice harsh. If the Council has fallen, then Earth is already compromised. Our only choice is to end this here, even if we must defy every order, even if it costs our lives. But before his officers could answer, the station shook. Alarms blared. The Horizon's engines flared alive. The docking clamps bent and cracked. The warship roared like a beast breaking its chains. From its hull, black shapes spilled out, shadows twisting into limbs, tall figures crawling along the station's outer walls, claws scratching metal. Soldiers fired railguns into the void, but the shapes melted around the bullets, reforming with every hit. They moved like smoke and flesh combined, their voices whispering in the minds of those who watched. Ward began to scream in his chamber, his chains rattling. It's spreading, don't you see? It doesn't need to reach Earth. It already has. On the surface below, people began reporting strange dreams, nightmares of dark corridors and voices whispering their names. Doctors recorded seizures in patients who had never been sick. Children drawing pictures of ships with glowing eyes, though none had ever seen the horizon. The scientists' last message before their feed went dark was clear. A single line sent across all channels. The creatures are parasitic. They consume memory. They wear identity like clothing. They are building themselves from us, and then silence. In the command chamber, Admiral Royce's face hardened. He turned to his loyal officers. Prepare the fleet if we cannot convince them. We will act without permission. His eyes burned with resolve. Because if we fail, Earth will no longer belong to us. It will belong to them. And outside, the horizon pulsed with light, its alien core beating like a heart, each throb sending whispers across the stars, each beat carrying hunger. The ship that should not exist was no longer a relic. It was a herald, and its message was clear. We are already inside you. The war for Earth began not with a fleet of ships, but with whispers. The infection spread like a shadow, unseen, unstoppable, moving faster than any weapon. On the station above Earth, soldiers started turning on one another, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, their voices repeating phrases that were not their own. We are one, we are many, we are eternal. Rifles fired in narrow corridors. Screams echoed, but no bodies were left behind. Only armor, only weapons cooling on the floor. Admiral Royce stood at the center of the storm, his command chamber bathed in red light from endless alarms. Reports poured in, engineers gone missing, comm officers staring blankly at screens, whispering names of long-dead relatives, ships in orbit losing control of their systems as if guided by invisible hands. Contain it, Royce shouted. But containment was already impossible. The infection was not only flesh, it was thought, it was memory, and it was everywhere. Captain Ward, still chained in his chamber, laughed through bloodied lips, his voice carrying over the comms though no one had opened his channel. I told you, Admiral, I told you, it is inside you now. It does not need the horizon anymore. You gave it your voices, your secrets, your faces. It walks among you wearing your skin. His words cut into the minds of those who heard, some collapsing, some screaming, some whispering the words back as if they were prayers. On Earth below, cities trembled with strange reports, civilians dreaming the same dreams of corridors and claws, doctors unable to explain why patients spoke in voices that were not their own. Children drawing symbols in ash and blood, symbols no human had ever seen but which matched the marks carved inside the horizon. Governments called it mass hysteria, but Royce knew better. Earth was already infected. Loyal Marines, the last untainted soldiers, fought desperate battles in the orbital station. They sealed off sections, firing into shadows, their bullets tearing holes in things that should not exist. Creatures that melted like smoke, then reformed, taller, sharper, hungrier. "Fall back!" their commander shouted. But there was nowhere to fall back to. The Horizon's black influence was spreading through every deck, turning steel into flesh, lights into eyes, corridors into veins. Royce gathered his most trusted officers, his voice a low growl. "We cannot win by fighting them here. Our only chance is to destroy the Horizon, collapse the rift it came through, cut the infection off at its source." But one officer shook his head slowly, his eyes shimmering faintly. "Admiral, why destroy what we can become? It offers us eternity." Royce fired his pistol without hesitation. The officer fell, his body already twisting into shadow before it hit the ground. Meanwhile, Ward grew weaker, his skin pale, his voice trembling. But his words sharper than ever. "I can feel it spreading. Admiral, even in me, I am not your savior. I am not your captain, I am its echo, and when I fall, it will wear me completely." The guards around him shifted nervously, unsure if they should kill him or protect him. Across the station, sabotage spread. Ships docked for defense suddenly fired on their allies. Reactors overloaded without warning. Whole decks vented into space. Marines fought not only shadows but their own comrades, unsure who was still human and who was already taken. On the surface, Earth leaders argued in secure chambers, but one by one their eyes began to glow, their voices blending together into a single chorus. "We are here, we are many, we are yours," their aides screamed, running for doors that no longer opened. The infection had reached the highest halls of power. Royce knew there was no time left. He summoned his fleet commanders, their voices weary, their faces scarred from endless skirmishes. "Our mission is no longer defense," he said. "Our mission is sacrifice. We will overload the Horizon's alien core, collapse the rift, and burn the infection out before it takes all of Earth." Silence followed. Then slow nods, grim acceptance. They knew this meant death. But death was better than becoming hollow shells for the darkness. The last loyal Marines prepared for the final strike, suiting up, their armor dented, their rifles scorched, their hearts heavy. They whispered their families' names, knowing they might never see them again. Yet their eyes burned with defiance, because humanity had always fought hardest when the void tried to swallow it whole. Ward's voice came again, softer now, almost human. "Be careful, Admiral, it wants you to fight. It wants you to burn the core because even destruction can be its weapon." Royce ignored him, though his chest ached with doubt. "If you are right, Captain, then Earth is already lost. But I will not stand by and give it our world without a fight." As the Marines boarded dropships bound for the Horizon's heart, the station shook with another wave of shadows tearing through the walls. Screams filled the comms, but the dropships launched anyway, fire cutting through the black, engines roaring against the silence of the void. The Horizon loomed ahead, alive, glowing, its alien veins pulsing like a star. And inside those dropships, every soldier knew the truth. This was not a rescue, this was not a victory. This was the last gamble of a species staring into the abyss. And as they flew toward the waiting mouth of the Horizon, Captain Ward whispered through the comms, his voice breaking, "It is waiting for you, and it already knows your names." The dropships tore through the void, engines burning against the black, their hulls rattling as they pierced the Horizon's shadow. The old warship loomed before them, no longer a vessel of steel and fire, but something alive, something breathing, its hull glowing with alien veins, its docking bays opening like mouths hungry for prey. Inside the lead dropship, Marines sat strapped into their seats, their helmets sealed, their rifles ready, yet no amount of steel could mask the fear in their eyes. They had fought battles, they had seen war, but nothing had prepared them for a ship that whispered their names. Some stared at the walls of the dropship as if expecting them to pulse like the Horizon's corridors. Others clenched their fists, whispering the names of their families back on Earth. Admiral Royce stood in the command chamber of the station, his hands gripping the console, his voice steady though his heart thundered. "This is our final chance," he said into the comms. "You are not boarding to reclaim. You are not boarding to rescue. You are boarding to end this. The Horizon's core must be destroyed, even if it takes every one of us to do it." Silence followed. Then one Marine answered, "We understand, Admiral." For Earth, the dropships cut into the Horizon's gaping maw, metal teeth scraping against their hulls, and then they were inside, docking clamps slamming shut behind them. The Marines rushed out, boots hitting the floor of a corridor that pulsed like living flesh. The walls trembled as if aware of their presence. Lights flickered in patterns that felt almost like breathing. "Stay tight," the commander ordered, their formation sweeping forward. Rifles raised, but the deeper they moved, the more the horizon changed. Steel panels gave way to walls of black tissue veined with red light. Doors opened like eyelids. Stairwells bent and twisted like bone. The ship was no longer just a machine. It was something born from nightmare. Captain Ward moved with them, his body weak, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim, his voice a rasp. "The core is ahead, but beware. It does not want to die. It will fight you, not with claws, but with yourselves." The Marines glanced at him with distrust, but no one argued as they advanced. Shadows slithered along the walls, stretching into tall figures with too many limbs. The Marines opened fire, rail rounds tearing through black bodies, but each time a creature fell, it reformed, its face shifting into the faces of lost comrades, voices screaming, "Help me!" "Don't shoot." Hesitation spread through the squad, fingers trembling on triggers until the commander barked, "They are not human fire!" Gunfire echoed through the corridors, light tearing the shadows apart, but the whispers only grew louder. Every Marine heard voices in their helmets, voices of loved ones, some long dead, some alive on Earth, calling for them to stop, begging them to come home. One Marine ripped off his helmet, screaming, "That's my daughter," before the shadows swallowed him whole. His scream cutting into laughter. Ward staggered, clutching his head. "It is feeding on you, every fear, every memory. It becomes stronger with every shot, every scream." But they pressed on, because there was no turning back. Finally, they reached the chamber. The heart of the horizon, the alien core. It was vast, pulsing with veins of red light, each beat shaking the walls. It was not machinery, but flesh throbbing like the heart of a beast, its glow casting shadows that twisted into faces. Thousands of faces, human and alien, all screaming in silence. The engineers rushed forward, setting charges, their hands trembling. "We'll overload it," one said. "Collapse the rift, cut it off." But as they worked, the core pulsed brighter. Voices filled the chamber, not whispers now, but a roar. "Do not destroy us, you are us. We are you." The faces on the core shifted, showing the Marines themselves, their own faces screaming back at them. One Marine collapsed, firing wildly into the walls. Another dropped his rifle, sobbing, "I can't kill myself. I can't kill my own face." Panic rippled through the squad. Shadows poured in from every door, the chamber shaking like a beast in agony. Ward stepped forward, his chains dragging, his face pale, his eyes glowing brighter. "This is what it wanted," he said softly. "It knew you would come, it knew you would bring the fire. It cannot open the rift itself, but with your charges, with your weapons, you will tear the wound wide for it." The Marines froze, their commander's voice breaking. "Is this true?" Ward smiled strangely, a hollow, broken smile. "You brought me here because I knew the way, but I was never free of it. I was always its voice. And now you are its hands." The core pulsed harder, the faces screaming louder, the walls closing in as if the ship itself leaned closer, the charges blinking red as they armed. Admiral Royce's voice came through the comm, heavy and desperate. "Detonated, collapse the rift. Finish this before it spreads." But the Marines looked at one another, torn between duty and fear, between saving Earth and releasing something worse. Ward's glowing eyes fixed on them. His voice layered now, human and alien. "There is no stopping it, Admiral. There is only choosing how you will serve." The Marines raised their rifles, torn between shooting the core, shooting Ward, or shooting themselves. The chamber shook harder, the rift pulsing beyond, and in that moment they understood. Whatever choice they made, it would not be victory. It would only be survival. And as the charges ticked down, Ward's smile widened. This is what it wanted all along. The horizon trembled as if it were alive, its core pulsing like a heart on the edge of bursting. Alarms screamed through the Marines' helmets, the charges armed, the countdown flashing red across every visor. The rift outside the hull widened, its edges rippling with fire and shadow. And all of Earth watched from below, millions of eyes locked on the sky, unaware of what was about to happen. Inside the chamber, Marines shouted over the roar of voices, rifles firing into the swarm of shadows clawing through the doors, each shot tearing the creatures apart only for them to reform again, the faces of the fallen shifting in the dark. "Hold them back!" the commander yelled, but his voice was drowned in the chaos. Captain Ward staggered toward the core, his chains rattling, his glowing eyes reflecting the alien veins pulsing across the chamber. His voice broke into two tones, human and not, "This is the end, Admiral. This is where the horizon was always meant to die." Admiral Royce's voice thundered over the comms. "Detonate it now. Do it before the rift tears open any further." The Marines froze for only a second, torn between orders and fear. Then the commander slammed his hand on the detonator. The charges blinked faster. The floor shook, the walls bled light. The core screamed, a sound like 1,000 voices shredded into one. The rift outside convulsed, fire and darkness collapsing in on themselves. The horizon groaned like a beast in agony, its hull cracking, its systems tearing apart. The shadows clawing at the Marines dissolved into smoke, their screams echoing into silence, and then, with a flash that lit the void, the horizon imploded, folding in on itself. Dragging the rift with it, the station shook. Ships tumbled from orbit. Earth's skies burned with falling light. And then silence. The horizon was gone, the rift sealed. And for the first time in weeks, there was no whisper in the comms. No shadow in the halls, only silence. The kind of silence that feels like survival. Earth rejoiced, people poured into the streets, cheering, crying, holding each other as the news spread. The horizon destroyed, the rift closed, humanity saved. Songs were sung, fires lit, governments declared victory, and Admiral Royce stood before the council. His uniform scorched, his voice steady. "We have cut the infection at its source. The war is over." The people believed him because they wanted to believe. But in the shadows of that celebration, doubt lingered. Marines who had been aboard the horizon spoke of strange dreams. Dreams of dark corridors and whispers that still called their names. Engineers who studied the explosion data found patterns in the energy that did not belong to physics. Patterns that looked like language. And Captain Ward was gone, his body never recovered. Some said he died with the horizon. Others whispered he had never truly been human to begin with, only a mask worn by something deeper. Something older. Weeks passed, Earth rebuilt. The skies cleared, the fleets repaired, but unease spread quietly. Doctors reported patients speaking in voices that were not their own. Children waking at night with glowing eyes for only a moment, then returning to sleep. Scientists studying debris from the horizon found fragments of metal fused with bone. Fragments that still pulsed faintly as if alive. Admiral Royce could not sleep. He dreamed of Ward's last smile, the way he had whispered, "This is what it wanted." He woke each night in sweat, hearing voices in the silence. But when he checked the comms, they were dead. Then, in a hospital on Earth's surface, a nurse entered a recovery room. She checked on a patient rescued from the orbital battles, a young Marine who had been unconscious since the horizon imploded. His breathing was steady, his skin pale. The nurse adjusted his IV and whispered softly, "You're safe now. It's over." The Marine's eyes opened slowly, too slowly, glowing faintly in the dim light. He smiled a strange smile, and in a voice not his own, he whispered, "We are already home." The nurse froze. Her tray clattering to the floor, the monitor spiked. Alarms blared, doctors rushed in, but the Marine only laughed, a soft laugh that grew louder, echoing with layers of voices. Elsewhere across Earth, lights flickered in cities, shadows stretched where they should not. Children whispered names they had never heard before, and people began to see shapes in mirrors that were not their reflections. The horizon had been destroyed, the rift collapsed, but the infection had never been about a ship or a wound in space. It had always been about memory, about identity, about becoming, and Earth had already given it everything it needed. In the silence of space where the horizon once drifted, something stirred, something vast and patient, not gone, not defeated, only waiting, and in the distance of human minds, a single phrase echoed again and again, soft at first, then louder, "We are you, you are us, and we have only just begun."